Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. And we have with us Michael Isaacs-Olaye from Happydemics. Having worked in companies like Integral Ad Science, leading business development for the EMEA region, he's also worked at AdTech giants like Outbrain and Rubicon Projects, which is now Magnite. Michael, very excited to have you on the podcast and welcome.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
No worries, no worries. So obviously I did a little intro there, but if you want to tell us a bit about, first of all, Happydemics, and then also what you do within the company, and maybe a little bit about your background as well.
Sure. Michael Isaacs-Olaye. I have been in the ad tech space for a little while now. I've been at Happydemics for about 8 months. So my role is to be VP of Sales and Partnerships and MD of the UK. That is to say that I'm growing out the business that we have in the UK. What Happydemics does is provides brand lift measurement within the ad tech industry in order to be able to give advertisers access to really important metrics as they try and link their creative to direct brand outcomes. And so we're able to do this in a truly multi-channel way and at great scale in every country. And so we've been having a lot of momentum in market recently. And I'm just trying to harness the power of that in order to bring as much of that towards the UK market as possible.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, you've got some extensive experience at places like you say, like Outbrain and Rubicon Project. Like, do they really help you in this role, I imagine?
Of course, everything helps, right? My roles have changed very much dramatically over the years. I think in terms of, especially Rubicon Project, it was still very much a sales role. At that time, I was kind of heading up agency and brand sales. My transition into Outbrain, obviously now Teads, everything used to be called something else, is where I kind of started to transition out of pure sales and maybe more into partnerships. And so with that, I was kind of the video growth lead, evangelizing video and being able to put in partnerships with the likes of SSPs and DSPs, moved into a pure sort of BD partnerships role while still at Outbrain. And then that transitioned me into IES, where I was doing that full time. So I owned the relationships that we had with, within EMEA, within social platforms, with DSPs, with SSPs, with data partners. I was able to build out our attention partnership with the likes of Lumen globally, with sustainability partners like Good Loop, Scope 3, Impact Plus. And so, yeah, very much partnerships, being almost like sitting at the kind of intersection between sales and product, which has really allowed me to sort of really want to understand how things work, right? In terms of working in partnerships, you've got to go a couple of levels deeper than sales, let's say, in terms of what you're able to discuss. And I think that's what's really set me up in order to be able to move into kind of carrying a bigger sort of commercial target in terms of my role now. I own the P&L for the UK region, and realistically, it's just about trying to deliver the right numbers for this region.
Yeah, definitely. I think you named some companies that we've actually had on the podcast previously, so very interesting. You've been working with those guys. So Happydemics, obviously you've just given us a brief intro, but do you want to give us the key features that make it stand out from maybe competitors?
Sure. I think the main thing is we don't use a panel. The way that we work is a truly kind of scalable way. We collect exposure data via whatever different channel we're measuring, right? It's online video, display, CTV. We can use a pixel. We can use IP data. We can use geofencing data if we're talking about digital out of home, so on and so forth. So we get exposure data. And then we will retarget people on the open web. We buy programmatic ad inventory, and within those ad display environments, we surface Happydemics surveys that people can choose to engage with or not. So this means that we can truly scale campaigns and run in pretty much any country. And I think one of the other things that's really important is the sort of the entry level to working with us is minimal. We only require 100,000 unique impressions in order to start measuring. And I think that allows a lot of people to be able to say, hey, you know what, I'm keen to test out a brand new study, but now there are kind of no real barriers for entry. So I can, I've got a campaign that's maybe heavily targeted, or there's heavy targeting parameters all over it, or it's very nuanced, very specific, but we can still be applied to those. So I think there's many other things. I can start talking about AI and all that kind of fun stuff, but I think at the core concepts, these are the things that kind of set us apart: is our scalability, our ease of working, in terms of being kind of plug and play, and our ability to be able to apply to any media channel.
Yeah, amazing. And I guess that sort of opens the door to sort of smaller advertisers as well. I guess you mentioned smaller campaigns. You don't need to run huge amounts of impressions to actually run a survey against it, right? So you're sort of opening that up to smaller spenders, which is good.
Yeah.
In terms of, so you guys, I mean, obviously it's quite an innovative company. I mean, like you say, you've sort of built out solutions there that kind of nobody else is really doing or in the market. So you guys are obviously at the forefront of AdTech, and how are you sort of driving innovation at the moment?
I think via what we're doing, right? So, you've got to be innovative to be able to do things in a different way to how other people look at things. There is a industry standard for what people have expected in terms of how brand lift studies should be run, i.e. panels. So, being able to run not using panels really gives us a lot of, it gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of what we can now do, because we can now take our methodology and we can bring that outside of measurement and into, for example, optimization, maybe offering in-flight capabilities, being able to provide predictive capabilities, leveraging AI in order to be able to predict the outcome of your campaign before it even goes live. I think these are all the things that we want to do, right? We want to keep our finger on the pulse of what's important, and we want to be able to adapt, but then actually lead in terms of being able to get ahead of the curve and understand what is it that, understand the direction of travel, and then understanding, okay, this is a solution that's going to be able to satisfy all of the needs of our clients.
I was going to say that's quite interesting, because we talked to a fair few measurement partners, and there's something that they say as well, sort of moving away from just post-campaign reporting and moving into, in-flight optimization, which is really exciting for trading teams, right, for people like us. And then you mentioned AI predictive. That would be, I mean, to be able to, or at least, I guess, approximate the success of a campaign before it goes live is like surely the holy grail, right?
That's what we want to do. You want to kind of provide a full loop, full service. I think we really want to be able to provide our clients with the ability to be able to plan, optimize, and measure within our platform. We want to be sticky. We want to be a really, really useful partner. And I think by leaning into these capabilities, that's how we're going to get there.
Definitely. Amazing. So we've kind of touched on AI a couple of times already, but how do you think it's going to change the AdTech industry over the next few years?
Yeah.
Broad question.
Naturally, right? No, of course. Look, I think we've been talking about AI for however many different years, but I think realistically, only in the last year, we're really, really seeing that it's actually taken off in a really meaningful way. Okay. And so the question is more about how much do we lean into AI and how much kind of human interference do we have? I think those are the things that we're kind of coming to, that are, let's say, not complicating, but people are having to really think about. I think if you ask, a room full of 50 marketers, they're going to give you completely different answers in terms of how involved they're wanting AI to be with their everyday operations. Is it, we want to embed it into everything that we do, or is it just a tool that allows us to be able to maybe scale a bit more efficiently? It completely depends. I think for me, where I find it really interesting is being able to use it for predictive capabilities. I think that's really exciting, because I think, especially in the measurement space, right? For us, what we have are tens of thousands of data points, right, that we've kind of collected over however many campaigns you've run. So being able to leverage that data and then translate that into predictive capabilities, I think, is what advertisers want to see, right? Because they want to be able to know, ideally, beforehand, what's going to work and what isn't. And if you can kind of give them with a certain, give them that information with a certain level of confidence, I think that's important. And I think that's what we've kind of got to try to lean into. I think that's relatively harmless, right? Trying to match up the measurement and try to match and with the, let's call it the pre-planning, pre-bid, whatever capabilities. I think that's a really fun thing to do. That's a really fun challenge. But of course, other people are kind of embedding that into the actual framework of how they work in every single piece, and let's watch this space in order to be able to see how all of that kind of stuff develops. But yeah, I think deferring to my earlier point, if you asked a bunch of different people how they believe AI would develop, they're going to give you completely different answers in terms of how they want to work with AI. And I'm sure you've probably seen something like that before yourself.
Yeah, we've heard all sorts on the podcast. Obviously, like, for example, changes in UX from an AdTech point of view, moving from standard point and click UX to more of a prompt sort of chat interface. But then also, obviously with the advent of agents now, there's a lot of talk about moving towards almost fully autonomous ad buying, which, with programmatic has kind of been on the horizon for a long while. The initial premise of programmatic with the DSPs, was effectively you would have these algorithms that would optimize your media for you across the media available on the platform. But I guess like the agents are now able to do it across broader media sources and maybe with even more autonomy. But we were just discussing this today, and we see it that effectively, even when you have something as powerful as an agent that could run an end-to-end campaign for clients, you're still going to want humans in the loop. So it'll be interesting to see, which way it goes, right? So,
and I think something like AdCP as a work group, in order to be able to let's say standardize how AI will scale within this industry, is important, because it isn't just one person dictating. Depending on how you look at it, it isn't just one person dictating how AI should be used and developed. It is a group of us all coming together, working collaboratively in order to be able to kind of provide safeguards, or to be able to say, look, I love AI, but I also want, human interactions with, within this process. And so I think things like that are going to be important for us to be able to make sure that we're doing this the right way.
Definitely. And are you guys involved in that? Are you in the working
Trying to
group?
get involved. Yeah, we are actively trying to get involved. Yes.
Very cool. Very cool. And so, how are you guys implementing AI in the business at the moment? And maybe directly for your clients, are you seeing good results from that?
Yeah. So I think there's going to be a lot more that we're going to do in the future. Probably some stuff I can't talk about just yet, but in terms of what I can talk about, I think I've already mentioned one. So we have a product called Predict, which is in beta with us right now. And so what you can do is, when you're setting out your campaign and you put in all the different parameters that define that campaign, what we'll be able to do is predict the likely outcome of that campaign. And so this is really useful in the pre-planning stage. You don't want your money going to waste. So if we can tell you with a certain level of confidence, this is the likely outcome, you can already make optimizations potentially that are going to save you a lot of money down the line. So that's just one way. And then the other thing that we're doing is we're sort of embedding it in the reporting, in the sense that, we're going to summarize our campaigns based on all the tens of thousands of campaigns that we have run, in order to be able to say, firstly, this is how your campaigns run. This is a breakout of each of the different KPIs and what it means. But this is also what you could and what you should have done in order to be able to get better results. And I think people find that really useful. when you get your brand lift, you don't necessarily want to go and do a lot of work in terms of trying to define what that data is. So it's great that we can leverage AI in order to bring that to life for you. And of course, all of that is editable. You still can go in and sort of edit that yourself and put that into your own words or put your own spin on things, whatever it might be. But it's nice that we can kind of provide the basis for that within the platform.
Amazing, yeah, and these are getting good results. Are clients sort of seeing the benefit of this?
Absolutely, yeah. No, people love it for sure.
Amazing. And outside of AI, what are the trends you're currently seeing in the space that maybe people should be aware of? We quite often get CTV for this one, but are there any other trends happening in the ad tech and media world that maybe you think people should be aware of?
I think everyone knows, right? But there's a lot of talk that continues around. I think especially curation. I think the disintermediation between the DSPs and the SSPs continues to widen and grow.
How do you see that playing out of interest? I mean, do you see the SSPs taking more? We know a lot of people sort of experimenting now and trying to find new ways of accessing inventory and applying data, sort of beyond the traditional DSP sort of route.
Yeah. Well, you put me right on the spot. We work with both and we love them all. But I think you'd be silly not to understand and recognize that a lot of people are pulling money out of maybe working with DSPs and putting them more into SSPs that are going to be able to offer curation services. Being able to work closer to the end user, I think provides a lot of benefits. And so, yeah, I think that's a trend that's going to be really, really interesting to follow and to see if and how, which we're already seeing what the Trade Desk, launched the other day with OpenCTD. So I'm really intrigued to see how that plays out. But yeah, I think that's, watch this space on that. I think that's a really interesting part of the industry. I think the other thing I'm very curious about is within retail media. I think the ability to be able to leverage first-party data is super important. And so as we try to navigate what the identifiers are, compliance data, so on and so forth, if you're able to leverage that and then apply the right targeting, then you're finding the right people in the right places. I think that's a really, really powerful story. And I think the fact that retailers are kind of opening the doors in order to be able to leverage that for both on-site and off-site provides a lot of opportunity, and it's very, very interesting. So yeah, there's probably just two that I'd call out for now.
Definitely, that interplay between the SSPs and the DSPs is an interesting one. I think I was just thinking in terms of obviously SSPs traditionally have kind of represented publisher interests and DSPs are sort of representing buyer interests. If you merge those two platforms, do you see that maybe there's going to be a conflict within whoever wins that battle?
Entirely possible, right? But it's also, look, when you're an agency, for example, you win, right? Because what you don't want to do, ideally, is just pay two sets of fees. So it's kind of like who can give me the best situation, right? Where I'm paying one fee, ideally in a super transparent way. And from an SPO perspective, this is kind of what SPO has wrought, right? Is people trying to kind of cut people out of the supply chain. And now I don't think we necessarily saw it as DSPs cutting SSPs out and SSPs cutting DSPs out, but we're here now. And so, will they kind of merge and become the same thing? We'll see.
Yeah. No, it'd be interesting, and like I say, it'd be interesting to see if they can manage that potential conflict there as well. Like, obviously, they've got to, for me, the SSP's job was to obviously maximize yield, right, for the publisher, and the DSP's job was to get the best rates, and find the best inventory at the cheapest price. So then when you have that merged into one, how does that work out when it's just one organization or one piece of tech that's trying to do it for both sides? It'd be interesting to see. Cool. And
for a while.
Sorry.
It's been happening for a while if you think about it, right? In the sense of Google, right? So I think the question is more: does anybody want to be another Google? Is it worth taking a risk? So I think that raises another whole set of questions, right? I think Trade Desk could go and buy an SSP, and that could make things easier. But when we've seen what's happened with Google, is it worth it, right?
Yeah,
So I think that, yeah, I think those are just some of the questions that people are asking themselves.
definitely, definitely. And for Happydemics, what's coming up for the business in 2026?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of the fun stuff that we're looking to do, I've already mentioned about in-flight, that's coming soon. I've mentioned about predictive capabilities as well. That's to the fore. So I think what we're trying to expand is the granularity of our reporting in as many different fields, right? As we look at social and other environments as well, in order to make sure that the exposure data that we're getting there is as granular as possible. So we'll increase the kind of exposure data that we can get. We want to factor in important, other important things such as frequency, so on and so forth, that are going to be important to our potential growth. Um, yeah, I think it's just about also trying to increase the boots on the ground service, right? We're going to be expanding into different regions over the next year in order to be able to provide growth at scale. We've already kind of put boots on the ground in APAC with opening up an office in Singapore, and we want to be able to do that in other areas as well moving forwards.
Very cool. So international expansion. Are you guys active globally at the moment, or are there any markets that you're not available in?
We are active globally. We are
Nice.
working with companies and clients all over the globe.
Amazing, amazing. Very cool. And so, what we like to do is just finish off with some quick fire questions. First of all, what's your favorite brand in the media or ad tech space, apart from Happydemics, obviously?
um, there's a couple that I've kind of worked with who, always happy to be able to test things out. That I can name off the bat. People like Adidas, um, I think Volvo, also another one, Nestle. Um, I think they were always very keen to be able to test out things when it came to sustainability and attention, and all the fun new metrics that kind of were coming to the market. So I think they're very open minded, and I think you need to be in order to be able to get the best results. Because if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you have no room to be able to learn. So you have to keep it fresh, and you have to be prepared to fail, because that's how you're going to be able to grow and understand what works and what doesn't. So I think those are just a couple of the brands that I know are absolutely doing things the right way, for sure.
Very cool, very cool. That's the first time we've had like clients mentioned as brands to watch in the space. I think, yeah, it's exciting because we've done some work with Nestle in the past, and yeah, those sorts of companies, those sorts of clients are great to work with because they're always looking for new things in media to test, right?
Mhm.
Um, so, an individual in the space you'd like to give a shout out to, and why?
There's lots of people that I love in the space. I think that my old boss Jim Egan, at IAS, he's SVP of Business Development, nicest man in AdTech. He is a genuine hero and a giant, someone who I loved working with. Really approachable, very 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 knowledgeable, and knows everyone. And I've learned so much about how to be able to lead a team from him. Chance Johnson as well. He's Chief Commercial Officer at Nexon. He's the reason we're probably speaking today. Unfortunately, he's the guy who brought me into AdTech. And so he, the most beautiful man in media, and also incredibly smart, and just honestly just really able to, he walks into a room and just kind of owns the space because he knows what he's talking about, and he's really able to kind of command the space and speak with authority, which is again another great life lesson that I've understood that I needed to try to learn if I'm going to really progress in terms of what I'm doing.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, if I may say, you've done a very good job of that on the podcast. And apart from that, I guess the number one lesson learned since starting in the industry.
Yeah, I think it's to be curious. I think this space moves on so much and so quickly. Every 5 minutes, there's something brand new, a new challenge that we've all got to try and solve. And it keeps it interesting, right? Um, there's so much to learn, like the amount of three-letter acronyms that everybody's got to kind of keep up to date with. Like you can't do it all, right? And especially if you're coming into this brand new, honestly, like my head fell clean off my shoulders for months before I felt like I was able to kind of go into any meeting and speak with any kind of relevance or authority. So I think you have to be curious in order to be able to know what's going on and potentially what's coming next. Because maybe what's coming next is the thing that you can make yourself the expert on, and you can become a subject matter expert on, and then you can really kind of impart your knowledge and then become more important, right? So being curious, keeping your ears to the ground, I think is super, super important. And that's something that I would advise anybody to do.
That's a great lesson. I think with the three-letter acronym thing, I think that's completely valid. We were just, experimenting with in the AI space and the agent space, and there's
My
just a
gosh.
bunch more that we've got to now familiarize ourselves with. So
Wow.
yeah, all fun and games. Michael, real pleasure having you on. Thanks for imparting your wisdom to our listeners, and yeah, speak again soon.
I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.